Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff, and this show is designed to highlight the work of philanthropic leaders here in the United States and then beyond. And with us today, we have a wonderful young woman, Christina Lewis. Christina represents the next generation of philanthropists. She not only is a philanthropist, but she is a mother, she's a former journalist, and an all-round very special woman. Christina, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. And Christina, I understand you're the founder of the All-Star Code, a charity designed to help young brown and black men with learning skills on the computer and then in the whole tech world. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the All-Star Code and why you decided to start this charity?
Yes, thank you, Jean, so much for having me on your show. It's a real pleasure to speak with a fellow philanthropist and have a chance to talk about All-Star Code, which, focuses on young men of color to ensure that they too can succeed in the 21st century. We teach computer skills, coding, but also leadership skills. And we've had really good results with our students, 95% of whom going on to four-year colleges and 70% majoring in computer science. Our oldest graduates are working as software engineers at companies like Facebook and Google and LinkedIn and other places like that. I started the organization 7 years ago now, in 2013, seeing that, of course, tech was the engine of job growth and wealth creation, also excitement. It's where startups were made, but that there were very few black and brown people present in it.
Yes, I've read that.
Yes, but while there were organizations for girls, there were virtually none for boys. And black boys and Latino boys, as we now I've started to see as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement, face tons of challenges. Black boys and Latino boys and men face many challenges, yet there were no organizations focused on helping them also succeed in the 21st century economy. So,
well, I think it's wonderful, and I understand you've also followed in your family's footsteps. Your mother, Loida Lewis, was a guest on this show quite a while ago, and she spoke about your life together and also the family foundation. Your dad, Reginald Lewis, who was the first billionaire black man in the United States to...
First black man to own $1 billion business.
Which is unbelievable. It was Beatrice...
TLC Beatrice International.
Right, and I always think of Beatrice Foods.
Yes, it was the international piece of Beatrice Foods.
Yes, and so your family had the Reginald Jackson Foundation, I believe, and you decided to follow in their footsteps and start your own 501c3, your own charity. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And so you started in 2013. I've actually been to some of your charity galas here in East Hampton.
Oh, great.
Yes, I believe at your home on this beautiful lawn. And I remember there were about 500 to 600 people attending, and people would come from all over New York for the night, and then I guess they would either stay here or go back to New York, but it was such a happening and so important that there was a massive amount of people. It was a beautiful, beautiful event, a wonderful crowd.
On the ocean, nice crowd, everyone dressed up.
I remember, I was all dressed up too. It was just exquisite. And so how many young boys do you actually help every year? Starting, say, with your first year, I would imagine it was very challenging in the beginning to get this off the ground, because
it was.
For our viewers, anyone who starts a charity will know that it's very difficult when you first begin. It's like starting a business. It's the same thing, and it takes a lot of time, it takes knowledge, and then it takes funding. So start from the very beginning. I want to hear how you began and how it all worked out.
Well, your viewers might get interested in this because I really had no idea what I was doing when I started All-Star Code 7 years ago. My work on the Reginald F. Lewis Foundation, the Lewis Foundation, which my mother, Loida Lewis, chairs, and I'm a director and currently the treasurer. had been private. We were a private grant-making foundation, no website, just doing what we'd been doing, giving to children's programs and arts organizations that always had been really animated by racial justice and wanting to address particularly the causes of systemic racism.
Which is so important. And
it seems times have caught up with us. Times have caught up with us.
And when you look back on the history of our country, it hasn't been a necessarily a good one. It's been a very rugged one, and I think a lot of people are very upset about it and embarrassed about it. And meaning, I look back on slavery, and I think it was just a total disaster. And so things need to catch up now.
Slavery, I would say, was a total disaster. Very long-term, very long-running
disaster.
Disaster and crime. And yes, well, that's that's in the present today. But the Black Lives Matter movement has stunned me in the amount of support here in East Hampton.
And around
in
the world,
Hamptons,
really.
and around the world and around the country.
Yep.
But 8 years ago, it was not on as much on the radar screen, certainly widespread. So I had this idea just to do something in computer science, but for boys, Black boys and Latino boys, because we'd seen that they were really overlooked. And the foundation, for the first time, decided to seed the grant, just because we all felt that it was really important. So my goal was actually to hire someone else to do it. I'd find an organization, give them $100,000, and say, okay, you do it because you have expertise, we'll help. But then as I went into it, I was really emotionally attached to the project.
I understand.
And as it went on, ended up really doing it, building it, with myself as the leader.
And how old were you, if you don't mind? You were in your 30s, right?
Yes,
and I don't know whether I'm supposed to be asking that, but
sure. Well,
that's just amazing.
Thank you.
You should be very proud of your work.
And my son was 1 year old. My first child was 1 year old, and
so
now
you
I
had
have
your
3.
hands full. You had a young child, and then you were.
Yes, but I came from a real activist tradition. You mentioned my mother, Loida Lewis. I mean, she is not only a dedicated philanthropist in the Black community, picking up the banner from my father, who perhaps I should start with him. He when he became the owner of the largest Black-owned business in America, he was, of course, very focused on on growing that business and managing it. We moved to Paris, but he was a philanthropist already.
Yes.
And gave huge grants to Howard University, to Harvard. He was also really politically active. He was a significant funder of Jesse Jackson's presidential campaigns, of David Dinkins' campaign, successful campaign to be the first Black mayor. So I really grew up with that. Now, he of course died in 1993, and my mother herself, both before and after, picked up that torch in her leading role in supporting Black causes and racial equity causes, but also she's Filipina and is incredibly politically active. I'm sure she told you about this, but she's leading Filipino Americans for Biden, helping to ensure that we win in 2020, and also has a range of causes in the Asian American community. There are always signs, political signs, around the house for different marches that she's organizing. So it's really what I was born and bred for, that, just as a part of what we do now. So this summer, one of the main art project was making signs for Black Lives Matter. That's how the kids learn to spell, how they're coloring. They learn to color very neatly within the lines. Because of this. So
you're a philanthropist and an activist, and often the two, I don't really see how you can be a philanthropist and not be an activist. The two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important what you're doing. And I read also that you were a journalist and that you worked for the Wall Street Journal, I believe, for 5 years. And tell me a little bit about how that was, and has that helped you with your career as a volunteer philanthropist? I know I don't think you get paid for this, but I'm not sure. But anyway, you're doing so many great things. But how was working for the Wall Street Journal?
Well, just point of fact, I was paid by All Star Code for a long time. A mistake I will not make again. But I recently moved to a board position, to a volunteer and board position with the organization. I'm the secretary and the governance chairman, as well as will be chairing our summer benefit, slated for next July.
Hopefully, right?
Yes, hopefully. Well,
we don't know with this pandemic.
Big question, yes.
We're living in very trying times and very uncertain times. But
2021, the outlook is so uncertain.
Everything.
Yes, we were very lucky this past July. We were honored. We had our benefit virtually. And Robert F. Smith, the philanthropist and billionaire, agreed to be honored. Marcus Samuelson agreed to be honored. Questlove DJ'd for us, all virtually. But actually, we netted more money. Your audience will love this. I almost shouldn't tell people, but we netted more money from the virtual event than we had from the in-person event.
Well, that's amazing, and that's a testimony to the work you're doing, because it's that important that people want to support it, gala or no gala. Now, getting back to
the Wall Street Journal.
Yes, the Wall Street Journal, and then I want to ask you about the number of boys you're
supporting.
Of course. But first, the Wall Street Journal.
Journalism is a great place to start a career. I learned how to think like a reporter, almost like an analyst, how to look at the data and analyze it and spot trends and see where things were going. I learned how to speak to all different kinds of people. The Wall Street Journal is the nation's leading business newspaper, so you had to speak to, I covered real estate and design and architecture, so I had to speak to people who were selling homes for $80 million, say, but also speak to people who were, laying the brick in those homes, or all of the different vendors or people who lived in those neighborhoods and all around the country, even though I was based in New York City. So it was
it was very helpful for what you're doing now and for your future career. And
you want
I do a little writing myself. Yes, I do.
Who?
So, I write out here for magazine Social Life, but I've also been a contributing editor to different business journals on philanthropy.
That's
and
great.
I really enjoy it, and of course now as a TV host, I meet a lot of different people, but I've always met a lot of people because of my work as a philanthropist and as someone who's very active in many different social circles and then other circles, political circles, all sorts of circles. And
you are.
And I think it's so important. I know you went to Harvard.
Yes.
And then
but guess who I covered at the Wall Street Journal when I was writing about real estate?
I would think very high net worth individuals.
Yeah, one person in particular.
I don't know who.
I covered Donald Trump.
Oh, interesting.
Yes,
okay.
I was for a year or two the lead reporter on him and his family and real estate entities. It was indeed.
And
whole other story.
The next time we have you on the show. So now getting back to All Star Code, I understand you work. How many boys have you actually enabled to go on to college? Because I find this extraordinary and so important.
Around 800 boys.
Wonderful.
We've helped to not just go on to college, but to major in computer science and pursue technical fields. That's what we're extremely proud of.
And then I'm sure you're giving them the skills to move forward in terms of confidence, and I would imagine you probably help them with public speaking and all sorts of things that are all so important. I really love what you're doing. And,
Thank you.
And I'm just so honored to have you here on the show because Christina Lewis, to our audience, she is a young philanthropist. She's the founder of the All Star Code, a charity that helps brown and black young boys learn computer skills and other technical skills. She is the next generation of philanthropists. And for all of you watching, any one of you can be a philanthropist. If you have the time, you give your time. If you have the knowledge, you give your knowledge. And when you have resources, you have an obligation to give them. And don't be afraid to start a charity. Don't be afraid to volunteer, because everyone has something of value to offer, every single one of us. And back to you, Christina. So what's on the horizon? I understand you have a new project you're working on, and I started to read a little bit about that, but I want to hear from your words.
Yes, thank you. So I was on maternity leave when George Floyd was murdered. So I was.
You have a baby now.
I have a baby. Yes, I had my third child at
congratulations.
the height. Yes, at the height of the pandemic in New York City, March 24.
A challenge, to say the least.
Yes, yes. But so I had, I had free time, and of course was just so. Had felt so many things following the George Floyd's murder, and decided to create.
Thing. I mean, it was a terrible injustice, but again, I would think most of the police officers are good people, but perhaps we need some new training, or the ones that are doing heinous things, we have to weed them out. Correct?
Absolutely.
Because it caused so much anger in the country and so much upset, and it's just everyone has to be treated the same.
I mean, the police, the police form a crucial function, and I covered cops for a year as a night cops reporter at the Stamford Advocate. So I wrote the police blotter. I talked to cops for a year, and I gained a sense of of their thinking, and of course they're vital to the functioning of our society. There are criminals, and I certainly don't want to be out there having to catch them and track them down. Yet I do think, from my personal experience, there are real problems with how the police treat people, and it's not just Black people. To be honest, it's actually all people. And how they behave in our society the way it is today. But Black Lives Matter for me is about that this is a moment for Black lives, and that too many white people and non-Black people haven't really thought about and addressed what has happened and what is still happening to Black people in America. So when I think about Black Lives Matter, it's not about defunding the police, which personally, I don't, or at least I don't agree with that. If it's about abolishing the police, that's not what I believe in. I do believe in really remaking it. But it's about that this is a moment for actually thinking about Black lives and the trauma that Black people have gone through, and the enormous amount of pain that is still taking place today as a result of systemic racism. So that is
and I agree with that, and I think that there has to be a racial justice. We have to treat everyone equally. Otherwise, we're not good human beings. No one should ever be judged by the color of their skin, or by their gender, or by their sexual preference. We have to look at everybody the same, and that hasn't happened. So I'm with you on this, and I agree with you. I do think, though, that we had quite a bit of violence, and I think a lot of this violence didn't even come from, that came from people that just saw an opportunity to loot and steal, to do the wrong thing. And I saw white people in Walmarts on CNN stealing televisions. And I said, what is this all about? What does this have to do with Black Lives Matter? It has nothing to do with racial justice.
Yes, and seeing militias invade courthouses and threatening people. It really is a turbulent time in this in this country for so many reasons. And I have a question for you. To what extent, speaking for philanthropists in the Hamptons, how do you think they perceive Black Lives Matter? Do you think Hamptons philanthropists support Black Lives Matter on the whole?
Well, I don't know whether they're giving money. I know one of the charities that I'm very involved with, New York Women's Foundation, I was on their board. I had to rotate off because we had a 2-year term, but I'm still very involved. I'm co-chairing their gala coming up in October, on October 20th, and we've given $1 million to Black Lives Matter. I think, I don't know whether it's yearly, but we're giving a lot of money, and so people may not give directly, but they give indirectly through other foundations. But I think it's very important. I think I don't have a friend. They're not going to be my friend, number one, if they don't believe in racial justice. And so I think the support is there, the desire to see all the discrimination end is there. For the Hamptons, you know, I'm one person. I know that I'm involved with the hospital here, Southampton Animal Shelter. I support many, many different charities, as you and your family do. I think it's so important. And I think it matters to people. And I think that people truly do care. And I think we will move forward as a nation. And but you have to be careful about Instagram and tagging Black Lives Matter, because not everyone likes it.
It's true. It's true. No, there is real confrontation happening. I mean, I certainly am for Black Lives Matter, and you know, I'll say it here, people who aren't down with the cause, I mean, we can go our separate ways, you know, you know, I mean, but I'm certainly about that cause, and the places that I choose to go and spend time will be ones that have stood up and said how they, you know, what they think.
I think
but to the
violence,
point about
no one wants violence, though. So we don't want any organization to condone violence, just the way we don't want the police to show violence towards individuals when someone's acting out, correct? I mean, we all have to behave properly. So
absolutely, and I think that if people who bring up George Floyd and just talk about the riots and don't bring up, you know, the horrific reality of the brutal racism that Black people, Black women, especially Black men, experience at the hands of the institutions that are supposed to keep us safe, that really is always you know, that's a warning sign to me. You know, you should be thinking about, you know, the George Floyd and what happened to him was absolutely horrible. You know, and that should be the stunning moment, you know, for you if we talk about May. And then, of course, I mean, I certainly was horrified by the violence that engulfed New York City. I live near Union Square. I was calling around what's happening, you know. And I'm glad that that's ended. But really, it should be about, you know, the video. If you've watched it, have you watched it? Did you see it?
I've watched a lot of
you watched some of it. You've watched some.
Yeah, I did watch it.
So for me, that's what's emotionally resonant. But to talk about philanthropists and how they can support Black Lives Matter, that's what Give Black, a new organization that I co-created just out of this movement, what it's for. It's a database of all Black-founded nonprofits. Because you can, out of the $450 billion that Americans give away every year, only a tiny amount goes to Black-founded nonprofits or Black-led or Black-serving nonprofits. So these organizations have been cash-starved for years. And for philanthropists who do want to make a difference in racial justice, yes, you can certainly support. You can give directly to Black Lives Matter, and you can give directly to bail funds, but that's not the only way. You can give to Black organizations that are focused on causes that you care about. There are Black environmental charities. You know, there are, of course, a number of Black school and education charities, arts and culture organizations, but also LGBTQIA organizations, women's empowerment organizations, health, mental health, as well as physical health, athletics.
Yes, so and I'm on the board of New York City Mission Society, so we serve the most underserved children of New York City, and we are based in Harlem, and majority of our work is up in Harlem, and we work with mostly people of color, and so I've been on that board for many, many years. It's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, charity in the United States.
Really?
And we are very cross-cultural. Our board, everything we do is cross-cultural. Yes, and quite a few charities that I support are like that. And I understand the importance, and I think a lot of people do. And so I love what you're doing, and you're creating a database, and people will be able to go there and see which charities have been founded by Black individuals, and then support those, and then it's all good, because we all need to come together, and we have just a little bit over a minute left. And I want to ask you, you're wearing this adorable, beautiful outfit.
Yes, thank you.
We're both in stripes.
I like the stripes. It's our moment.
But you mentioned that you were wearing favorite designers of
yours.
This
the
is purple dress. It's so pretty.
Thank you. This is by Royal Jelly Harlem. Maya, she's born and bred in New York City. And it's a Black-owned brand, Black women-owned brand, made in New York City. This is out of this lovely shirt fabric, and this is my go-to, especially in the summer. It's so comfortable. There are also matching masks.
I love it.
Meghan Markle wears this mask, Royal Jelly Harlem. It's been featured in a lot of fashion magazines. You can check her out on Instagram. But I'm also wearing this. Now, this is Marnie, but it's rented through Rent the Runway. Which is founded by my friend Jennifer Hyman, who also has a place out here on the East End. Well, so I am repping my friend's companies.
It's really beautiful, and I happen to wear a lot of the Black fashion designer B. Michael's clothing. I have to say, I'm not only buy his clothing, I also support his business. So,
wonderful.
And anyway, we're just about out of time. So you are such an inspiring young philanthropist, and I just want to thank you and congratulate you and say to you, just keep going, because you're going places, you're doing a lot, you are really just fabulous.
Thank you.
This concludes Successful Philanthropy with Christina Lewis, philanthropist, former journalist, the founder of the All-Star Code. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host. I look forward to seeing you next week.